Hey everyone, Adam here from Make Data Useful. Today we have something truly exciting for you to share for all the data enthusiasts out there. We're doing a collaboration with none other than Adam from Charming Data. So for those who are not familiar, Adam is from Charming Data, a master of Plotly Dash, which is an amazing framework for building web apps. So taking your data from being data into something really, really special and usable. And so Adam's agreed to, talk with me and talk with you around some of the tips and tricks that he can share when you're starting out to use Plotly Dash. Adam, welcome.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited about this collaboration, and I'm excited about showing the users how to get started with Plotly and Dash.
Yeah, super excited. Okay, cool. So before we kick into things and all those amazing tips and tricks, why don't you take a moment to explain who you are and a little bit more about your channel, Charming Data?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Adam from Charming Data YouTube channel. On the channel, I focus on helping users create interactive visualizations, web apps using Plotly and Dash. These two libraries are open source, completely free, obviously, and they allow you to build beautiful visualizations and also interactive. In essence, you're building a data app. It's all about making data come alive and ensuring that it's both insightful and accessible to everyone. So that's really what my channel is about, and I've been doing it for 3 years now, since January 2021, I think it was.
Amazing. And slightly off topic, but your upload schedule seems incredible. Like every time I go to your channel, it feels like there's always a new video. Less about the audience, a bit about me. What's your secret? How do you keep up to date with that?
That's a good question. I remember I used to do at least a video a day, a week when I first got started, because I was reading somewhere online that if you really want to take your YouTube channel seriously, you have to post, you don't have to post once a day, but you should publish a video like once a week, maybe twice a week. I couldn't keep up with twice a week, but I was able to do once a week, and now and I'm still able to do it. I'll take the nights and I'll prepare the application, and then I'll try and record the video on the weekend.
Incredible. Awesome. All right, now back to the audience. Let's get started with some of your tips and tricks. So if somebody is looking to take their data to the next level and start to visualize it, where do they start?
Okay. So Adam, what I think is best is to make the difference, if you think it's a good idea, between Plotly and Dash.
Yep. Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think that's going to help him also start. So Plotly is graphing library. It allows you, both are open source, but Plotly allows you to build data visualizations, bar charts, scatter charts, scatter graphs, histograms, just graphs, right? And they're usually static. I mean, you can move things around with a legend, zoom in, but they're usually static. It's not a dashboard. Dash kind of like sits on top of Plotly, or natively incorporates Plotly graphs into Dash, because Dash allows you to build fully fledged data apps, right? You can even build Python web apps if you want, regular web apps in Python if you want. Usually people build with it like analytics dashboard. So it's taking all these graphs and it's connecting them with components like drop downs, radio buttons, sliders, date pickers, because really Dash, what it is under the hood, it's actually wrapping React components in Python. So everything that's available in React, not everything, but many of the components that are available in React are wrapped in Python. And with Dash, you're able to build these wonderful web apps.
That's so cool. And so for those wondering, you mentioned React. Does somebody need to know React to use Dash?
No, because it's all wrapped in Python, so you don't need to know React, you don't need to know JavaScript, you don't even need to know CSS. All you need to know is Python. I mean, if you know a little bit of CSS, you'll make your dashboard even more beautiful and more organized, but all you need to know is really just Python.
Nice. Okay, and so from a getting started point of view, now when I first started learning Dash, I did the thing that everybody does and they Google it. And one of the first resources I found was your YouTube channel. But aside from that, where else can people go to find out more about learning Dash?
That's a great question. Can I share screen?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Okay. So let me share this browser. 1 second. Okay. Are you able to see the?
Yep, that's coming through. Plotly open source graphing.
Perfect. So to get started, I would first explore the graphing library. Even before you create these beautiful interactive dashboards, explore. If you don't know the graphing library, just explore it, right? Usually the basic charts are the most common ones. So I will just click on basic charts, go into the main page, and then go into like the scatter plot. Now there's a lot of example here. You don't need to go through all the different examples, but just scroll through the page and see what Plotly is capable of. And very quickly you'll realize that with very few lines of code and attributes, you can create a graph, right? Just one example here, you're using Plotly Express, taking this data frame called the iris data set that probably everybody knows about. You can replace this with a CSV sheet of your data set, and then you declare the data that you're using, the x-axis and the y-axis. That is it, right? And then that easy. And then you can make it a little more beautiful, or you can embellish it with like hover data and colors and the size of the bubbles if you want like a bubble chart. And you always have, in most chapters, you always have like an example of how you can do this with Dash to make it more interactive. But this is like a great start, right? Even today, Adam, like when I'm trying to build, I know in my dashboard, I need a scatter plot or a bar chart with my data set. Then I'll just go here, I'll click on bar chart, and I'll say, okay, let me just take this and I'll copy it and I'll paste it into PyCharm, and I'll just get started with this instead of having to write the whole code. Even though it's only 4 lines of code, I'll just take this and I'll replace these attributes with my own data.
Perfect. Now, Adam, you've mentioned obviously Dash, which is the sort of web app. It's the React components that you don't have to know web development to use. And we've talked a bit about Plotly, but I could see here it's mentioned Plotly Express. Do you mind just explaining to the viewers, like, what is the difference between Plotly and Plotly Express?
So actually the difference is between Plotly Express. You can create graphs in 2 different ways. You can create graphs using Plotly Express, and you can create graphs usually at the bottom of every chapter using Plotly Graph Objects, usually referred to as Go. Now, remember, Plotly Graph Objects and Plotly Express, PX. You really don't need graph objects. You really don't need Go to start with. This, even me, I've been doing this for 2-3 years. I rarely need to go into Plotly Graph Objects because you have to define everything. You have to define the trace, you have to define the figure, the layout, the data, and you can compare Plotly Express to Plotly Graphs as a Seaborn is to Matplotlib, right? Seaborn sits on top of Matplotlib. Plotly Express sits on top of Plotly graph objects. So any graphs you create with Plotly Express, this one, bar chart, x-axis, y-axis, actually under the hood, it's building the chart with Plotly graph objects. So you really don't need to know it unless you really need to customize things. And when you start needing to customize things, this is like for more advanced users, so I won't go into this more than a couple of seconds, but you would use the figure reference. You're like, okay, I got my bar chart, but I really want to do more customization. What can I do? And then I usually look for the different attributes that you can do here, where you can update the traces and you can do a lot more things, update the family, the font of the title of the graph, and so on and so on. But you really don't have to, everything is with graph objects under the hood, but you're really just working with Plotly Express.
Nice. Okay, cool. So if I'm using Plotly Dash, I'm typically interacting with Plotly Express to build out those visualizations. Yeah, perfect. Okay, and thinking about like web development, which I'm terrible at, by the way, I think about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And obviously JavaScript's that mechanism to do interactive things in a website. How does Dash do that? Like, what is the secret to the JavaScript side of things? Like, how do you interact with things in Dash?
So in Dash, you're using the callback to do all this. But before I go into the callback, let me just give a brief introduction to Dash and how it works. Really, you're first, like a typical Python app or file that you're building, you have to import the libraries that you're going to use. You instantiate your Dash app like this. So this will almost always stay the same. And the last 2 lines of code are almost always going to stay the same. This is just because Dash sits on top of a Flask. This is like the typical kind of syntax you'll see at Flask, and that's really it. I even nowadays sometimes I don't even remember how to write this. I'll just copy paste it. So you don't really need to remember this, right? You just copy paste. The only thing that changes is the things within the layout. This is how you define a layout in Dash, and the layout app.layout equals, and then HTML div is the container. Don't worry, you see HTML here. Don't get scared. Like, I need to know HTML. No, all you need to know is like what a div is, which is just a container of things that go inside the page. So anything you want to be displayed on the page, here we want a title to say hello world to be displayed on the page, then we have to put it inside an HTML div or the children of the div. In most cases, you won't even see children. It will be the first attribute. You'll just put hello world. But yeah, you assign whatever you want to the page for your users to see. You assign it inside the app layout.
That easy, huh? It's
that easy.
Good to
Look
go.
at example right here. That's a bit more layout. Here we're adding a title, my first app with data, and then we're adding a Dash data table inside the HTML, the layout, the div of the layout, and now we have a table inside the layout.
And that's a tiny amount of code, right? That's like 2 lines and you've got yourself a working app.
That's it. Just a title and a data table. That's it. You're right. One last thing before the callback is you usually want to incorporate some kind of data into your app because you're usually working with data. Unless you're just like building out your website for a resume or basic things, usually you're building data apps. So you incorporate a data. Now, you can incorporate a CSV sheet. This is just a simple CSV sheet that is living on GitHub right now. This is the raw HTTP link. You can actually, if we click on it, you'll see the raw link. But typically, especially when people begin, they will work with a CSV sheet that lives on their computer. So you just have to put the Gapminder 2007, the name of your CSV sheet .csv. That's it. And you also sometimes you'll incorporate Excel sheets, so you'll read _Excel, or you might incorporate like data from a database if you're a more advanced user, and then you just have to connect to that database and incorporate it here, usually above the layout. So we have the libraries, we have incorporation of data, we have what we want to display on the page. And one last thing to display on the page, usually you're going to display, in addition to a data, a title, usually you're going to display different components. Like in this case, we're displaying, here we're displaying radio buttons. You see here, DCC radio buttons.
Yep.
So we're displaying radio buttons. You see here, pop, life expectancy GDP, and this is a Dash component, right? A Python Dash component. For all the other components, just go into open source component libraries, go into DCC, Dash core components. Here you see the radio button in the R, it's alphabetized, radio items, but you can see many other things. You can see how to incorporate a dropdown, and you'll see examples of how to incorporate a dropdown into your layout. How do I want to incorporate an input field, right? And you'll see how to incorporate an input field like this.
Nice. That is very good documentation, because it looks like each time they're giving you a working Dash app. They're giving you all the imports and they're running the server, and it's all there. So you can just pick that up, run it, and then modify it from there.
Exactly.
Really nice.
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then the last thing we're left with is the callback. So we've learned how to import packages. We've incorporated data into our app, instantiated our app, built our layout, whatever we want to be seen on the page, and then we have the callback. And this is going back to your question that you asked about 2 minutes ago, Adam. This is like the heart of Dash. Like once you know how to work with the callback, then you have so much power in your hands. You can do anything you want. Not a lot of libraries similar to Dash or open source libraries similar to Dash have the callback. And that's a disadvantage in my opinion, because once you know how to work with the callback, you can do really anything you want. Because what the callback does, it connects, it's really simple. It connects between different components inside your layout. So in this case, specifically, we're connecting between the radio item and the graph. We're going to input the value of the radio item, right? We're going to take the value of the radio item, which in this case is life expectancy or GDP or population. And then we're going to do something here. In this case, inside the callback function, we're building the histogram. And then we're going to return an object that is always assigned to the output. And in this case, this figure is assigned to the figure property of the, what is this ID? This ID belongs here, of this figure, right? Of this DCC graph. This is how you display figures on the page in Dash. You have to assign the figures that you build with Plotly Express, assign them to the figure attribute property of the DCC graph. And
nice. So I've got a graph, and inside that graph there is a figure, and I can literally just swap out that figure as much as I like through callbacks based on what the user how the user interacts with my app.
Exactly. You got it. Fast learner. You can build a scatter plot, a bar chart. Remember, everything is from Plotly. Oh, this is the community forum, but everything is from Plotly here. So you can build any graph that you want. Plotly has over 100 graphs, and all you need to do is return it as you return the graph that you build to the figure property of the DCC graph. Well, and you can return multiple. If I put here another DCC graph underneath, I'll just have to give it a different ID. We'll say controls and graph number 2, and I'll just put here another output, which will look exactly the same. The only difference is the ID will have controls and graph number 2, and then I return 2 figures. One will be a histogram, and maybe one will be a scatter plot. So that's really the power of the callback. You can do anything you want within by connecting components within the layout.
Very nice. So if I had a CSV file that had lots of different categorical data, I can give the end user the power to select their own category, and it will magically just update those charts for them, and then they can view all that data in one place.
Exactly. Now,
Beautiful.
Adam, the callback is not like it's not the easiest thing to understand. Like I've had a lot of experience, so I explain it pretty well. But still, you can do a lot with the callback. And so I would highly recommend, I don't know if you can share with your audience, but I will share with you after this recording a link of a video explaining the callback in more depth, if you want to share with anybody.
Absolutely. I think it'd be great if we could have maybe your top 3 or 5 videos that you think could be really useful for beginners. We'll add those to the description, because I think it'd be great to have people head over to your channel and get that sort of crash course and everything we're talking about here today.
Perfect. I'll even give you like a cheat sheet that we'll put together that will have a bunch of different resources that will allow people to learn Dash quickly.
Awesome. That's really useful. Thank you. Okay, so that's the 20 minutes in Dash, and we've talked a bit about the callbacks, and you touched on it just a moment there, but you talked about the community. How do people get engaged with the Dash Plotly and the community behind all of that?
So I opened this tab up before our recording because I really wanted to I think this is a great resource. Like, the community is where I started learning Dash, right? Well, the documentation is where I started, and then eventually I did something that wasn't necessarily in the documentation. I was like, how do I do this? And then as soon as I found out about the forum, I created an account, and just the community there is so helpful. So whenever you have a question, you just create a new topic and ask your question here, choose a category, let's say Dash Python. And then if you want to tag, usually it's just a question tag, put your title here, how do I do this? And then you ask the question, right? Ask it in a way that allows people to understand what exactly you're trying to do. And within hours, maybe sometimes even faster, somebody's going to try and help you out. So this is a great tool to have to learn Dash. And also you'll get automatic notifications and emails, like if something's happening within the Dash world, if Plotly came out with a new Plotly Plotly Express release, or a new Dash release that gives you more power in your hands, then you'll know about it by being a member in this forum.
And I think in the past, I've seen sort of announcements of the latest updates to Plotly Dash in this forum. So is Plotly Dash actively being worked on? Is that something that's just going to keep getting better over time?
Yeah. Every month Plotly tries to do a release with Plotly and for Dash, the graphing library and the interactive web app library. And so yeah, with time, I mean, we're limited right now because I want to focus here on how to get started with Dash, but you give me another hour or two and I'll tell you like what you can do with the charts and how many charts you can put on there and what type of interactivity they'll really blow your mind. But that's how you learn about it as you read about these releases and the demos.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's how I learned about some of the updates to callbacks. I won't go into detail in this chat, but I remember that callbacks were a tiny bit limited, and now they feel like they are just completely unlimited in how you can interact with callbacks, which is really amazing. So this is really awesome, Adam. So this is a good introduction to sort of Plotly Express and obviously Plotly Dash. What other advice might you have for people trying to pick up this new skill?
Yeah, one thing I'll also give you in that resource page that you can share with others, Adam, is I'll give you a link to this. This is Dash Example Index. This is actually close to 100 different apps, demo apps. They're small, built by the community for the community, right? So it's really to help people understand how does a callback work, how does a plot graphing work. So you can just click on any one here, or you can maybe choose by component and say, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more about like the drop down. How does it work? And then it'll filter. It'll give you all these small, simple apps with the drop down, and then you can click on it, and then you'll see the code on the right and an interactive page on the left where you can change the drop down, you can change it, you can zoom in, and then most importantly, you can read the code and try to understand. Oh, okay, because it's usually under 100 lines of code. Oh, this is how I take 2 inputs inside a callback. This is how I filter a data frame and then return the figure to the layout right here. So this is a great resource to have.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's so cool. I love that you can just look at something. Yeah, I want my app to do something similar to that, and bam, here's the code for that. It's good to go.
Exactly. People will like look at the example, say, "Oh, I want my app. I want a scatter plot. I want a line chart. I want something like this with like a Boolean switch, right, on and off." So then they can look at it and do it. And then just do one last thing. I remember, Adam, you talked to me a little bit before the recording about like also that what inspires you is like to give people ideas and the potential of what they can do with data. So I would highly recommend also this website or web page. It's the plotly.com example web page. And this is more sophisticated. So it's not like if you're going to click on this, you're going to understand like necessarily everything that's in the code and how the app works. So these are pretty sophisticated apps. But the point is that you get to see everything that's you capable that's capable in Dash, right? This is kind of like whatchamacallit, you're looking into the European grid system.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And then you can somebody built and most of these apps are open source. Like they offer, I don't know if this one does. I can go back and see, but they offer the code on GitHub. Again, it's for more advanced Dash users, but it gives the audience. Yeah, there's the code here on GitHub. If you have a GitHub icon, that means the code is there, open source. It gives the audience an idea of everything you can do with Dash and how you might want to explore your data. You can still go by business, science, engineering, sports analytics. Go into view all. Sometimes there's more than 3. This one on the NBA, and then it just gives you like really cool ideas of what's possible with data exploration.
Oh, okay. So that one there on the left with the basketball court, would that be an example of maybe using the graphing library, and that's used like sort of more custom? Because I'm pretty sure is there an inbuilt basketball court, or has someone customized that quite heavily?
Good question, actually. I never thought about that. I think it's customized. Yeah, there is no a graph that looks like a basketball court. So what I think they did is, they just drew. It could be a graph with line chart, and then they just put like a graph inside of it. So
that is
just
so
a lot
cool,
of customization.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't even know that website existed. So thank you. That's really awesome.
Yep.
Cool, Adam. Look, before you start to sort of wrap up and you give your final words of advice to the audience, is there anything else you'd like to sort of share or comment on?
I obviously my channel is Charming Data, so I'm going to recommend Dash and Plotly. There are some other libraries out there that are building data apps with Python is something that's becoming more and more popular. So there are others that are popping up. I would really recommend sticking to Dash, because although it does take a couple of hours to fully control, understand the callback, once you understand that, then it's fully scalable. You have so much more power when working with Dash, and you can do so much more with it than maybe other libraries that you can get started within like 2 lines of code, but then you're like stuck once you have like more than 1 gigabyte of data, or you get stuck because you have multiple graphs you want to put on there, and then it becomes slow. So Dash is very, very fast. So that's why I would just recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're so kind of blessed in the Python ecosystem that if there is other tools out there, a lot of the time you can mix and match and bring things together and use other tools. I've only just started looking at, alternatives to pandas, for example. There's polars and there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and like SQLite, I've been looking at DuckDB, and there's a million and one things. What I love about Plotly Dash, it's been around for a while and it feels like it's under active development and there's a growing community behind it. I think it's the right choice, definitely for me, and I'm hoping my viewers sort of see it as a great choice for them, because it is just so powerful. It's
funny that you also mentioned polars or other libraries similar to pandas, because we just came out with a release that allows you to also, it used to be really just pandas within Plotly Graph, so now you can use polars and other libraries as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I personally, I just come out of PyCon over the weekend, and I just love the Python ecosystem because there's just so many cool things being built, and then over time they kind of merge together, and you end up in this wonderful world where you can mix and match and change things around and do all sorts of crazy stuff with this one language, which is really incredible. Awesome. Okay, Adam. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me on this, collaboration, which has been fantastic. This is the opportunity for a call to action. So I think for me, it's all about, hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you do check out the wonderful... how many videos are you up to now, Adam, on your channel? It's got to be... It's a lot, right?
It's more. I think it's close to 150.
150 videos. And so if you are interested out there, learning Plotly Dash, make sure you are subscribed to Charming Data. It is a fantastic YouTube channel. It's one that I subscribed to early on when I first started delving into Plotly Dash and learning more about Python. So thank you so much. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and a comment. And Adam, anything last words from yourself?
Make sure to turn on your notifications so you get notified when new videos come out. For Adam's channel. Anything? No, not. I would just say, I was thinking about this, Adam. You were asking me, what would I recommend from my experience? So I thought about it last night, and learning how to work with data and build beautiful data apps. And everything else that you teach on your channel is a great skill to have. What I would also recommend is try to combine it with your own field, within your own field of knowledge, because knowing data visualization or how to build data visualization is great, but people or employers are often going to come to you and say, hey, can you build data visualization, or we want you to work for us, or whatever, within the field of whatever, cancer, or within the field of global warming, or the field of physics. So usually you want to become very knowledgeable within at least one field of knowledge, like repeating myself, but within one field, and then you can, as you know, data visualizations and Plotly and Dash, you can build on top of that knowledge and build beautiful things.
Couldn't agree more. Take your domain of knowledge and just level up with Plotly, Dash, and Python. I think that's fantastic advice. So for all those engineers and researchers and scientists and all those different people out there, there's always room for a bit of Plotly, Dash in your life. Fantastic, Adam. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Thank you. It was lovely. Appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.